Hey everyone, how you doing? It's Liam from PushSquare, here with our hands-on impressions for God of War's PC port. This article was written by me for the PushSquare website and was also edited by me. What a lovely treat. Anyway, enough of that, let's get started. In 2018, Sony Santa Monica shipped God of War, a soft reboot of the fan-favourite action-adventure trilogy that traded the Greek pantheon for Norse mythology. Featuring an emotional narrative that focused on the relationship between the rough-edged Kratos and his young son Atreus, God of War reinvigorated the series without straying too far from the brutal combat systems and thrilling boss fights that made the series so beloved during its PlayStation 2 heyday. Nearly 4 years later, we still consider God of War to be the crowning jewel of the PlayStation 4's expansive library, offering an experience unparalleled by anything else on the platform. It should come as no surprise then, that as part of a continuing initiative by Sony to bring their best first-party titles to new platforms, that God of War is the latest to launch for PC. After spending a few hours with the game's PC port, we can happily confirm that this is an exceptional way of playing one of PlayStation's finest exclusives. For starters though, some housekeeping. We played the game on a PC that included an MSI GeForce RTX 3080 graphics card, an Intel Core i9-9900KF processor, 32GB of RAM, and a 1TB M.2 PCIe NVMe SSD. That was certainly a lot of words, wasn't it? We primarily played on a 1080p 144Hz monitor, but did lug our system downstairs into the living room to test the game on a true 4K display. So what's new in the PC version? In all honesty, very little. Content-wise, this is the same game that launched on PlayStation 4 in 2018. However, the port does come with a smattering of graphical improvements, including higher resolution shadows, improved screen space reflections, and enhanced ground truth ambient occlusion. These new visual enhancements are a welcome addition but largely unnoticeable. Shadows are slightly softer and reflections are potentially a little crisper, but even with all options enabled and cranked to their highest setting, the PC port largely looks the same as the original game. Really, the only substantial visual upgrade in this PC release is the ability to play the game at a true 4K resolution, rather than the checkerboard solution used in the game's PlayStation 4 Pro and PlayStation 5 versions. Sadly, if you're expecting this re-release to deliver a meaningful visual upgrade compared to what's currently available on PlayStation systems, you're gonna be a touch disappointed. Well, we say disappointed. God of War still looks as spectacular as any other modern release, especially when played on a 4K display. Despite taking place within a decaying world, its environments are full of vibrant natural elements that contrast starkly against the crumbling ruins you find yourself exploring for the majority of the game. To put that waffle simply, it's still a looker. Performance-wise, we experienced no issues with God of War on PC. Our setup comfortably met the game's recommended ultra requirements, and we were spared any noticeable frame rate drops during the game's opening sections or open world hub area. Even with the game set to ultra, God of War ran at a consistent 60 frames when displayed at both 1080p and 4K resolutions. Players with access to high refresh rate monitors will be pleased to hear the game supports up to 120 frames per second right out of the box. Admittedly, we couldn't consistently hit that lofty goal on high graphical settings without taking advantage of Nvidia Dlss. Supported by a number of compatible RTX graphics cards, including ours, Nvidia Dlss uses AI upscaling to improve overall performance without sacrificing visual fidelity. Although we were able to run the game at 60 frames per second without the need for DLS's assistance, at 120 frames the feature became a bit of a lifesaver. Turned off, God of War's frame rate fluctuated between 90 to 120 frames per second when played on ultra settings. With DLSS turned on and a few strenuous settings such as shadows dropped down a touch, the game ran at a fairly consistent 120 frames per second with very few drops. It's debatable whether or not a single-player action game requires this high a frame rate, but we'll admit that the game's combat certainly looks delicious when running this fast. Watching God of War's gooey enemies splatter into mush under the force of Kratos' axe looks divine, even if there are noticeable visual compromises required to reach this level of performance. In general, there's little to point out in the game's settings menu. Accessibility features found in the console version are also present here, and as expected, the game can be played with any PC-compatible controller as well as a mouse and keyboard. Mouse and keyboard controls are largely serviceable, but a bit odd if you're used to playing the game on a PlayStation pad. Holding left control to aim your axe, for example, feels a bit clumsy. Thankfully, all keyboard controls can be remapped from the game's menu. Disappointingly, gamepad controls can't be remapped, with controller users forced to stick with the layout found on PlayStation 4. It's a minor gripe, but a shame considering the flexibility of most modern PC releases in this area. While we're on the subject of input methods, we'd be remiss not to highlight how strange it felt to play the game using an Xbox One controller. Seeing that yellow Y icon indicating the ability to return our axe felt borderline illegal, but admittedly there is a small thrill to be found in using a rival's pad to control an iconic PlayStation mascot. I mean, maybe we need to get out more, but we'll take our kicks where we can get them, a thank you very much. With all this in mind, we suppose only one question remains. Should you play God of War on PC? Well, for first-time players, we can't recommend this port enough. God of War is an essential release, and we're thrilled that one of the greatest video games ever made can now be experienced by a wider audience. Always a good thing. For those who've already played the game on PlayStation, however, the answer is a little trickier. To be honest, we get the impression Sony had no intention of enticing existing fans to double dip with this release. This is the exact same game you can play on a PlayStation 5, and unless you're looking to play it in true 4K, you may be better off holding onto your current copy. Saying that, we still had a lot of fun revisiting God of War on PC, a testament to the quality of the game itself, perhaps. This is a solid port that is sure to delight and thrill PC players in equal measure. For returning fans, it's a tougher sell, but still, you can't go wrong with Sony Santa Monica's modern masterpiece, regardless of your platform of choice. So there we have it, our shakedown of the PC port of God of War. What do you think? Will you be playing the game on your personal computer? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving it a like, and make sure to subscribe to Push Square for everything PlayStation. Thank you for watching, I will see you soon.